Duel of Eagles, an historical war game by White Dog Games, a game that is published by White Dog but is produced by Victory Point Games. And I'm happy about it because I played games by White Dog in the past. I was not impressed by their components. Now it is Victory Point Games that produce this game. That means that you have components that are of the same level of quality of the deluxe components that Victory Point Games has produced in the last year or so. So very good stuff, as long as you do not mind wiping a little bit of soot that will be around your counters once you punch them. That is residual from the laser that cuts the counters. After you clean the counters, everything really looks good. The game itself. This is a game about the Battle of Mars-la-Tour, 1870, part of the Franco-Prussian War. I do not know if you ever played a game about this battle. I certainly haven't, and the designer says that indeed there aren't many games. Actually, I think he says that there's only one game about this battle, and it doesn't even cover the entire battle, only part of it. Why so? Why has this battle been neglected by game designers? Because it is incredibly hard to model in a game that is fun to play. Because the French side outnumbered the Prussians in an incredible way. It should have been a disaster for the Prussians that, yes, were outnumbered, and on top of that also came in the battlefield piecemeal. They should have been wiped out from the earth. They should have been kicked into next week. But, on the contrary, they won. They achieved an incredible victory, a smashing victory against this vastly larger French force. How did that happen? Well, it was because of the indecisiveness and the lethargy of the French commander. Now, modeling this in a game is extremely hard because you have to add a lot of fiddly rules to force the French player to act like the French commander did. Whereas a French player nowadays would be able to perform much more effectively, having foresight and realizing what the situation is, and just would be able to win the game. So either you have a game in which the French player always wins if you do not script the game, or you add all of those fiddly rules and the game goes along historical lines. And it's extremely boring to play and feels scripted. How does Duel of Eagles solve this problem? How does it approach this design Gordian knot? Well, this is what I'm going to discuss in the rest of my video. This is the map for the game. It is printed on thick paper, cardstock type of material. Actually, this is two maps that you place one adjacent to the other. At the beginning of the game, the French player will set up his forces pretty much in this area here, with a large group here, for example. There will be a small group here, and the Prussian player will start with most of his units outside of the map on the turn track. Most of the Prussian units will enter the board as reinforcements, but there will be in turn 1 a small group of Prussian units around here ready to attack the French units that are in this area and ready to smash them. The Prussian player has advantages when attacking in turn 1. Then the French player will try to respond to that. Well, the French commander doesn't really understand what's going on, doesn't really know how to react to that. Meanwhile, small groups of Prussian units enter the board from different directions, from here, but also from here, and these small groups go around the French Goliath and upset the French Goliath from different directions. But how do you do that? How do you force the French player to be as incompetent as his historical counterpart was? Well, the way in which this game achieves that is through the magic of activation cheats and event cheats. This is a cheat pull game in which players will draw random activation cheats and event chips from an opaque container so that groups of units in the game will be activated in a random order. When you draw a chit corresponding to one of the commanders on the board, then you can activate that commander and all units that belong to that formation. However, Not all activation chits for groups of units are in the cup at the beginning of the game. There are groups belonging to the French player that are on the board, the units are on the board, but the activation chit is not in the cup. That means that they cannot activate, they are there sitting ducks, and that is a very elegant and very effective way to simulate the slow response from the French side during the actual battle, the historical event. Also, you have many event chits that do not activate units on the board, but generate events for the player that event belongs to, red for the French and blue for the Prussian player. Most cheats also have two events, actually, one on each side. The owning player chooses which event to use, and some of these events can be used for several possible effects. So it may take a little bit before you get familiar with all of the events that the game allows you to generate. When the activation chit of one of the commanders is drawn, then you activate that formation. Commanders can be in one of two postures. They can be in an attack or defense posture. The number printed in the bottom right corner is the movement allowance. This is command range, which is higher in defense. Units that belong to a formation with a commander that has a defensive stance, those units, well, because of the larger range, are usually able to move faster because they can move up to their full movement allowance, but they cannot move adjacent to enemy units, and infantry units cannot assault units. And on the other hand, units that are commanded by a commander that has an attack stance, those units can move adjacent to enemy units, but there is a higher chance that they may be out of range. However, differently from other games that use command range, here all units of the activated formation still activate. Simply those that are out of command range move at half of their movement allowance, but all other restrictions, like the ones about moving adjacent or not adjacent to enemy units, all other restrictions and all other effects are the same. So the effect of command range is simply to reduce movement or to allow full movement. That's for how activation works, but the first phase when a group is activated is not movement, is fire. Units can use their combat value, which is the number printed in the top right corner of the counter, to attack enemy units that are in range and that are in line of sight. Range is printed here on the right side of the counter in the middle, and it is represented by two numbers, a white one that represents range with full effectiveness, and the other one is extended range. So units here can fire against enemy units. Fire combat is resolved in a very simple way. You simply look at the fire combat table, you cross-reference the firing unit combat factor with a die roll after you take into account the modifiers that may come from different factors related to the firing unit, the target unit, and event sheets, and resolve the effects that may be a morale test, a shaken, casualty, shaken and casualty. Very simple to resolve. You resolve the effects, then you have the command phase proper, the HQ phase proper, in which you check command range. And this is important, it has to come before movement, because then the next phase is movement, which is, well, pretty much what you probably expect. Units move up to their full movement allowance, and that is the factor at the bottom right corner of the counter. Movement factors are affected by terrain. During movement, you do not have to stop when you move adjacent to an enemy. Yes, there are no zones of control, but still moving adjacent to an enemy is not the easiest choice in the world, because the enemy gets to execute reactive fire, opportunity fire, called in different ways in different games. After movement, for units that are commanded by an attacking commander. After movement, units that are adjacent to an opponent can assault, with the exception of artillery. Artillery units do not assault. Also, during movement, cavalry units may declare a charge, and the charge is resolved at the end of movement. Assaults. Here again, everything is resolved in a somewhat traditional and very linear fashion. You total the combat factors of the attacking units, subtract the combat factor of the defending unit, find the combat differential, cross-reference with a die roll after taking into account modifiers, and apply the results. The results, as you can see, will be a letter and a number. The letter indicates the side that the result applies to, attacker, defender. The number is the number of steps lost by the unit and or hexes that the unit retreats. That is, you can take all of your losses as step losses, you can take them all as retreats, you can choose a combination with some restrictions, because, for example, if there is a result with a red asterisk, then that unit needs to take at least one step loss. Losing units must retreat at least 1x if result is from a cavalry charge. They wouldn't be able to take all of their losses as step losses. You apply the results, and this is how you resolve assaults. Very simple. At the end of a turn, you have a rally phase in which units will remove their shaken markers. That's one of the effects of the game. They remove low ammo markers that may have acquired during the game. Not all units will get to rally during the rally phase, but that's one of the things that happen then. Also, the active player may attempt to rebuild an eliminated unit for each HQ, for each commander on the map. Eliminated French units are not available for rebuilding immediately. You have to wait 2 turns, as opposed to Prussian units that can be rebuilt immediately. You simply select a unit for each HQ that has lost a unit, you roll a die, and if the result is less than or equal to the rating, the command rating, and also the command range of the unit, then you're able to rebuild that unit at a reduced on its reduced side, because units are two-sided. When they take a loss, they are flipped to the reduced side, and when they take a second loss, they're eliminated. When they come back on the reduced side. And victory in this game is achieved by controlling key locations on the map. And those key locations have been selected in such a way that, because of those, the action tends to gravitate around the areas and in the directions in which things happen historically, which is something that happens all the time in the design. That is, that you realize that there is a lot that has been built into the design so that the action will overall follow historical lines, while still not feeling scripted. The players will simply play at the best of their possibilities. They do as best as they can, but the system is such that the restrictions, the limitations, and the opportunities that the two sides had historically will be there and will play a role. Things have been factored in such elements as the command range of the commanders. The Prussians have much better command ranges. The events. There are just many things that are there. The fact that the activation cheats of the French player are not all available at the beginning. Many things are there to make the game historical, to give historical flavor, to add challenges, and you do not feel that you're following a script. The only thing that feels a little fiddly at the beginning when you're playing the game is probably learning the effects of the event cheats. There are many events. Event cheats can be used in multiple ways. So first you have to learn what the events are, then you have to figure out how to use them effectively. Just expect in your first couple of turns to look a lot at the player aid that tells you what the event cheats do. this is a necessary step, but I think it is a very small bump along the road of learning the game, because the game otherwise is extremely linear, very streamlined, very intuitive. The mechanics are simple to learn, to absorb, and then to put into practice. Combat resolution is immediate, and yet at the same time there is a lot that's going on thanks to continuous interaction between the two sides. Opportunity fire has a role in that. The turn structure that is determined by the activation cheats. If you watch my videos, you know that I'm very partial to activation cheats. I love them. And I think that in this case they work particularly well. I think that even somebody who doesn't already love the mechanics as much as I do would appreciate what action cheats bring to this design, which is replay value, because the situation overall is always the same if you play a historical scenario, especially because of the different directions from which the Prussian forces are entering the board. You cannot alter things too much there, but the activation cheats keep things fresh and unpredictable. Also, they make the game very solitaire friendly, because you do not know exactly what's going to happen next, who's going to activate, what events are going to be drawn from the cup. A lot of these things play a role here, and they make, I think, activation cheats very well suited to this design. A very fun design to play, a very refreshing design. It is great to play a game about a battle that I did not know before. I did not know pretty much anything about it. Not only this, it is also great that the battle really feels different from other battles. It doesn't just feel like a battle that overall I had seen before in other situations. Now I'm playing the general dynamics on a different map with slightly different modifications. There is really something about the narrative here that I felt was very unique. At least I cannot recall playing something similar. Seeing these small groups that come from all directions and start puncturing the large enemy formation that is struggling to figure out what to do, goes back and forth, responding to different threats, to different parts of the map. Everything works very well, everything creates a great narrative, and again, you do not have to make it happen. It happens through the game, through the mechanics, as you are simply trying to enjoy the game and to make your forces act effectively. I can think of a lot of pluses that this design has, and I've been, I believe, listing some here. I cannot think of any minus that really matters, that really alters my overall very positive impression of the game. Duel of the Eagles, a design that I would highly recommend, a design that certainly gets 2 big thumbs up from me.